Yes, well, today marks the 45th anniversary of the death of Black Consciousness Movement leader Steve Bantu Biko. He was the founding leader of the Black Consciousness Movement who died in police custody, as you heard there, at the hands of apartheid police on the 12th of September 1977. He was detained after his arrest in a roadblock in Makhanda on the 18th of August 1977. And he never came out alive. A security police officer later testified that Biko was transported for 12 hours from his Port Elizabeth prison cell naked and unconscious to a Pretoria hospital the day before he died. We now speak to human rights lawyer, Professor Barney Pityana. Prof, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time. What is it that goes through your mind on this day?
Well, obviously this day, we, all of my generation, would be thinking about Steve in particular, but about many others who died at the hands of the security police during that time. For me, I remember very particularly the occasion which I can't quite recall because I was I was in prison, I was in jail, cell, held by the same police that had held Steve.
Prof, are you still there?
But it was not until a few days later that I was saying that it was not until a few days later that I discovered that Steve had died while I was in the custody of the same security police that had murdered him. I discovered that by chance because from the police cell where I was at Bakan Street in Gqeberha, the young white constable who was there allowed me to see a newspaper article. So in the loneliness of that cell a few days later, discovering that Steve had been killed by the same policeman, it was the loneliest moment that I recall I ever have been through, and the most occasion. Until a year later, by the way, I couldn't even attend the funeral that was taking place within a few days after that. So the morning, if you like, was a very lonely affair for me, as I was held in security police custody, believe me, by the same guys who had murdered Steve.
Yeah, Prof. I think there's still so much really that still needs to be done in this country. I mean, in 2019, the Steve Biko Foundation, it welcomed the South Gauteng High Court's unanimous ruling that essentially gave the NPA a go-ahead to prosecute former apartheid cop João Rodrigues. That was for his alleged involvement in the brutal murder of Ahmed Timol. But let's talk about the greater idea of recourse and closure for cases like those of the family of Biko. I mean, is there still an opportunity for us to have recourse in matters like those?
I think, like many of us, we believe it is scandalous that the murderers of Steve Biko have not appeared before court. The worst of them was a fellow called Gideon Nieuwoudt, who died without having stood trial for his heinous deeds. By the way, Steve Biko was not the only person that this Nieuwoudt guy killed. He also murdered Sizwe Kondile and others. And so, but he was not alone. He was not alone. And others were with him, still haven't, they're walking the streets of our city free. Nothing has happened. So that's the first place where to start. The prosecution of the murder to be emphasized. I think the second thing that needs to be done is to really find a way of memorializing Steve Biko. In some ways, some of that has happened with Steve. From former President Nelson Mandela to President Thabo Mbeki to President Jacob Zuma in many respects, all of them have done their bit to memorialize Steve Biko. And the nation at large is aware of Steve Biko. But Steve Biko was not alone. There were others who were there. Steve Biko had a family. Steve Biko had children. And now Steve Biko has grandchildren. So, so Steve, who, by the way, had a responsibility for support of the family. And so through all those years, the pain and the suffering of Steve had died. And so it seems to me that one hopes, and I'm not speaking out of knowledge, one assumes the Steve Biko family would have received support, for example, from the struggle pensions that are available, I know, in our country. But Steve Biko, as I say, was not alone. There are others, Srini Mudli, Peter Jones, who really are suffering. Certainly, Srini Mudli died prematurely. There are others who died, Mapeta Mohati, for example, during about that time, and loss and suffering in pursuit of our liberation is something that we owe it to these martyrs of our struggle never to forget.
Yeah. I agree with you there, Prof. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really do appreciate it. Human rights lawyer.
Thank you very much.
Professor Barney Pityana.